Hello, boys and girls. This is Miss Estes, and today we're going to read and write decimals. Our I can statement for today is I can read and write decimals to thousands using base 10 numerals, number names, and expanded form. Well, there are three ways to write a number. We have number form, word form, and expanded form. Number form is just that. This is when a number is written with only numbers. Sometimes it's also known as standard form. So here's an example of number form. All we see are numbers. Then we have word form, which is just that. It's when a number is written using words. And here is an example of a number written in word form. We have 311 and 54 thousandths. So we have the standard form or the number form of that same number, and then we have the word form. Last, we have expanded form. An expanded form is when you expand each digit by showing its place value. Fractions or decimals can be used to show the value of decimals. So we have two different examples here to show the same number. We have 300 plus 10 plus 1 plus 5 hundredths plus 4 thousandths. So that would be 311 and 54 thousandths. We might also see it represented this second way, where we're taking the digit that's in that place and multiplying it by the value of that place. So this is telling us that there's going to be a 3 in the hundreds place, and 3 times 100 would be 300. This is telling us there's going to be a 1 in the tens place, a 1 in the ones place, a 5 in the hundreds place, because we would multiply 5 times 100 to get 5 hundredths, and then a 4 in the thousands place, because if we multiply 4 times 1,000, that would give us 4 thousandths. So both of these are both representing the same decimal, 311 and 54 thousandths. So if we take a look, we have a number in our place value chart showing you each individual place. And for number form, like we said, that is just the same thing as just using numbers, and sometimes it's called standard form. So if we want to write it using standard form or number form, we would write just that. We have 25 and 138 thousandths. So that's how we would be able to write that number in number form, just taking it from the place value chart, one place at a time, to create the number 25 and 138 thousandths. So we have that same number, and we want to now write it in word form. So when we write it in word form, since we have a whole number part and we have a decimal part, we want to take it in a couple of steps. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at what comes in front of the decimal. So here's our decimal. So in front of the decimal, how would we read this two-digit number? Well, we would read that as 25. So that would be the first thing we would want to write, 25. When we see that decimal, we read that as and. That's how we know that we have a decimal in our numbers. We hear that word and. So 25 and is what we would type next. And then we want to focus on what comes after the decimal. Well, I want to look at this three-digit number that comes after the decimal. How would we read this three-digit number? Well, we would read that as 138. So that's what we would write next, 138. And the last word that we include in our word form is going to tell us the place value. It's going to tell us the least place value in our number. Thousandths is our least place value. So we need to make sure that we include that word thousandths as our very last word. So we have 25 and 138 thousandths. Since that 8 is in the thousandths place, we're reading it as thousandths. Okay, so we're going to take this same number, 25 and 138 thousandths, and we're going to put it into expanded form. And we're going to look at it two different ways. So if we want to do it in expanded form, we're going to take it one place at a time, starting with our greatest place value. We have a 2 in the tens place, so the value of that number would be 20. And then we want to put our plus sign. We have a 5 in the ones place, so it has a value of 5. So we include that next, plus. Then we continue on to our tenths place. We have a 1 in the tenths place, so the value of the tenths place would be 1/10, plus. Now our hundredths place, we have a 3 in the hundredths place, so the value would be 3 hundredths, plus our last place is thousandths, and yes, there's an 8 there, so the value would be 8 thousandths. So that's one way that we might see this number expanded. If we look at it the second way, we're going to take the digit that's in that place and we're going to multiply it by the value of that place. So we have a 2 in the tens place, and we're going to multiply it by the value. And the value of that tens place is just that, 10. So we want to multiply by 10 to get that value, plus our ones place. So we have a 5 in the ones place, and we're going to multiply it by 1 because that would be the value of the ones. Now the tenths place, we have a 1 in the tenths place, and we want to multiply it by the value. So the value of the tenths place would be 1/10. So 1/10 as a fraction. Now our hundredths place, we have a 3 there, so we're going to put 3 first, and we want to multiply it by the value of that place, and that would be 1/100th for our hundredths place. We have one more place, and that's our thousandths place, and we have an 8 in the thousandths place, so we want to put 8 first, and then we would multiply it by, yep, that's correct, 1,000th, because that is the value of that place. So like we said, you could expand it either way. Expand it using decimals or expand it using the fractions. Okay, so let's look at a few more examples. So they have given us a number in one form, and then they want us to write it in the two other forms of the number. So the form that it gives it to us up here is what? It's written with words, so yes, that is our word form. So we have 45 and 261 thousandths. So if we want to put that in number form, let's first focus on, because I see that word and that word and is a clue that I'm going to have a decimal. So I want to look at everything in front of that word and that's going to help me figure out my whole number. So 45, so I know 4 and 5 would create the number 45. Then for the word and, that's where we're going to put our decimal. And let's look after the word and. I see 261. So how would we write 261? 2, 6, 1. The very last word, thousandths, that lets me know that we have to make sure that our number goes all the way to the thousandths place. So if I look, we have tenths, we have hundredths, and we have thousandths. So this gives us 45 and 261 thousandths. So we are correct. Now we're going to take this same number and we're going to write it in expanded form. Let's do the expanded form where we are multiplying by the value of each individual place. So if we look, it's going to be helpful to use this number form that we've already written up above. So the greatest place value is the tens place, and the value of that place is 10. So we're going to multiply 4 times 10 for our tens place. Then next we have our ones place, and what do we have in our ones place? We have a 5. So we're going to put the 5 first, and we're going to multiply it by the value of that place, which is 1. And then we're going to move on to our decimals. We have a 2 in the tenths place. So we want to put the number 2 first, and we're going to have to multiply it by the value of that place. And the value of that place is 1/10 plus, now we're going to look at our hundredths place. We have a 6 there, and we need to multiply it by the value, which would be 1/100th. And then we have one more place, which is our thousandths place, and we have a 1 in the thousandths place. So we have 1 times 1,000. So we have our tens place, we have our ones place, our tenths, our hundredths, and our thousandths. So we have everything that we need for that number. All right, now we have a number, and they have given us the number in expanded form. And we're going to first write it in number form or standard form using numbers, and then we're going to write it in word form using words. So if I look at the the expanded form, I first need to make sure that I see my places. So we have a tens place, we have a ones, we have tenths, and we have hundredths. So my greatest place is the tens place. So I know I would need 2 places in front of that decimal to get to my tens place. Then I'm going to need a decimal point. And then how many places are we going to need behind that decimal? Well, our least place value is hundredths, which is the second place value after the decimal. So I know that we're going to need 2 places after the decimal. So now that I know how many digits my number will have, we can go back and fill in the numbers in the correct place. So 9 times 10, so that's telling us that we need a 9 in the tens place. So we're going to put a 9 in the tens place. We need a 3 in the ones place. And then we go on to our tenths place, and we need a 6. So that's the first place after the decimal. And then hundredths, we're going to need a 5. So that's a little strategy to help you make sure that you have all of the place values, because sometimes we will have to include placeholders if they don't give us a number to put in that specific place. So now we want to put that number in word form. So if I look in front of the decimal, the whole number part of this decimal, how would we read these 2 digits together? Well, we would read that as 93. And then for the decimal, we're going to write and. And now if we look at the 2 digits after the decimal, how would we read these 2 digits? That would be 65. And now we need to make sure we include our place value word. The smallest place value is what place? That would be the hundredths place. So our very last word in our word form would be hundredths. So we would read this as 93 and 65 hundredths. Okay, so a recap of what we talked about today. We have word form, we have number form, and we have expanded form. That's our 3 forms that we can write numbers. So if we're writing it in word form, we want to write the whole number, which would mean anything that would come in front of the decimal point. Then we want to write and for the decimal point. And then we would look at the numbers after the decimal, whether it's a 2-digit number or a 3-digit number. Think about how we would read that if it was a whole number. And then the very last thing we want to include is the place value of the last digit. And here's an example. So 678 and 93 thousandths. So we would read that as 93. And then since The 3 is in the thousandths place. That's why we make sure we include the word thousandths at the very end. In number form or standard form, again, we have to make sure that we write the whole number. Then we put the decimal point after the whole number, and then put your decimal numbers, add zeros if needed to keep the place value correct. So if we look at the example, we have 311 and 54 thousandths. 54 is a 2-digit number. We know that 5 and 4 makes 54. But thousandths lets us know that we need to go all the way to the thousandths place, which means we need 3 digits behind the decimal. So we have to put that 0 in our tenths place as a placeholder, so that way we are able to read this as 54 thousandths. If we wouldn't have that 0 there, we would have to read this as 54 hundredths. So we have to keep the 0, so that way we can read it as 54 thousandths. And then our last form is our expanded form. So you want to make sure you start with the digit with the highest place value, and you're going to start expanding each digit by showing its value, each individual place value one at a time. It says remember to use fractions to show the value of decimals. So we do see it with fractions. Sometimes we see it with decimals. It can go either way, just like we practiced. So 3 times 100 lets us know we have a 3 in the hundreds place. 1 times 1 means we have a 1 in the ones place. 5 times 1/10, so that means 5 in the tenths place. And 6 times 100th means we have a 6 in the hundredths place. Notice we didn't have anything for our tens place, but we have to make sure we include that 0 to hold that place in order to write our number correctly, because this has to be written as 301 and 56 thousandths. All right, guys, thank you for joining me today, and you did a great job.